Welcome to today's presentation, everyone. Byron White here, your host. I'm here with Tim Ash. Tim, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Byron. My pleasure.
Always fun to hook up with a famous world-traveling, monster-speaking Tim Ash. Thanks for that, Tim.
Well, I'm almost on the right time zone after my recent trip to Australia and off to Chicago for my conference next week.
Gotcha. I don't know how you work into your travel and speaking plans, Tim. It's got to get in your way.
Well, I keep trying to set it up so it's travel only, but it hasn't worked out so far.
Got it. Well, I know you're excited not only for this webinar today, but the start of the World Cup in Brazil in their first match. What do you think your chances are with Brazil?
I think they're a pretty clear favorite, but there's lots of strong teams at the top, so we'll see if my guys can pull it through. Can't say I'm rooting for my home team, Russia, because that would be just kind of a snowball's chance in hell.
Yeah, well, at least they're there, I guess, right? So that's a start. Same with the U.S. They're kind of already admitting defeat, it seems, as they discuss publicly their chances at the World Cup.
And I think the Australian Socceroos don't have much of a, how would you say, kangaroos leap chance of winning.
Nice. Well, I'm super excited to take on the hosting of this topic. Let me give everybody a quick spin with what's going to transpire today and a couple of footnotes with how this is going to work. So I'm just going to walk people through a couple of intro slides on the topic of neuromarketing, just a few questions that we'll be diving into today as we learn from Tim through his presentation. And then after the presentation, Tim and I are going to take on the review and makeover of a couple of sites with some recommendations based upon what Tim's going to talk about today. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation that I'm going to try to monitor along with Glenn, who's with us today. He's our staff member in our office, our marketing team member here. So we'll take a look at any questions you might have about the presentation. We'll have some fun makeover discussions at the end, and we'll try to tie it all into an hour and make it all work. So here's Tim's mugshot. If you haven't seen him at a conference, here's what he looked like. So if you pass him on the street in some international city or national city he's traveling, you can say hello to him. And he will smile exactly like that if you say hello to him, I can assure you. Known Tim for a long time. He's just a great individual. But, you know, for those of you that sort of are not completely in tune with neuromarketing, of which there might be some people on the line, it's kind of really the study of consumers' cognitive and effective response to marketing. And the research that's done using some cool technology really helps us learn why consumers make decisions and what part of the brain they're using to tell them to do so. But I think neuromarketing as a science has gained some momentum, if you will, because of companies like Google and Frito-Lay and lots of other companies that are actually building labs to understand how their millions of dollars of marketing dollars should wisely be spent and how consumers make decisions. So it's a pretty cool topic area, and I've documented this for you so you can see it later. But why should I really care what consumers think? I think that's an interesting point. It certainly affects conversion, which is why Tim is on the line. But you know, really, as it turns out, consumers are driven by both emotional and rational thinking, which Tim is going to talk about. You know, emotional thinking, as you can imagine, is fast and effortless and you know, unconscious and intuitive and just sort of happens quickly. But rational thinking is a little slower and more deliberate and thought out. You know, and the question is, how do these two different ways to think and approach a purchasing decision affect one another? And what's the mix in an individual, and how is it affected by their mood? So once again, Tim's got some answers for that. So the final thing you'll have is sort of how can I put neuromarketing to work, and I want us to keep these concepts that you see on the screen here in your mind when we're creating rational connection versus emotional connection. So think these things through. We can come back to all of these later. You can see them on the screen now, and they'll be in this deck available to everyone at the end, because I think there's some interesting concept here as you look through these bullet points as to how should we create campaigns and our website copy and our images that fit both a rational versus emotional. And Tim might have a third twist on all of this as well, which of course you will. But and then of course you will be able to get a copy of either of my books as a result of signing up for today's webinar. Here's the link of my new professional writing skill and price guide, which is super groovy and cool and includes some neat snap, crackle, and pop stuff that I actually debuted at the Conversion Conference some time ago. That was awesome and was received really well, and of course a copy of my Content Marketing Roadmap book that you can have as well. So without further ado, take it away, Tim.
Oh, well, thanks, Byron. I'm going to flip on my slides here, and like you said, take it away. I'm going to, let's see, give me 1 second. All right, you should be able to see my title slide at this point. So I'm going to talk to you today about neuromarketing, but before we get started, please make yourselves heard. In addition to writing questions into the Q&A pane, which we'll try to get to at the end, as Byron mentioned, please also tweet. The hashtag, if you just want to follow the conversion rate optimization topic, is #CRO. So make your voices heard. Let's hear from you. All right, so what I want to talk today about is neuromarketing science, but first I want to give you a little perspective about where we're coming from. Site Tuners is an agency that is focused only on conversion rate optimization, and we can help with conversion rate for both large and small companies in one of three ways. Blueprints for high converting web experiences if you're redesigning your site or just doing a facelift. Of course, landing page testing and test plan strategy. And a lot of what we do for clients now is work with them on an ongoing basis in kind of a conversion management role. And as part of that, also typically do knowledge transfer and teach them to fish and how to do conversion rate optimization in-house to make them self-sufficient. All right, well, my VP of Business Development told me I had to put that slide up, but enough of that. I'm going to give you a two-part story. The first is about your brain, or actually your three brains and your split personalities, and I'm not talking about any kind of clinical mental illness diagnosis among our audience members. Don't mean to make fun of that. But I want to talk first about how our brains work and then what you can do about it in the latest research from neuromarketing in terms of putting that to work for you on your website. In other words, we get caught up with the shiny new objects a lot, and we talk about the 140 character tweets and JavaScript that, and Google Glass, augmented reality. All of that stuff's wonderful, but you have to remember, even though the technology changes, what we're mapping it onto isn't changing. Our brain hasn't really evolved in the last 50,000 years. So, the focus has been on hardware and software, and I want to bring it back to wetware. There's some universal things that we can learn about the way our brains work, and there's some brain science is the last frontier. I mean, the brain is the most complicated object in the universe, over 100 billion connections among the neurons in the brain. So let's pay attention to that, and there's a lot of exciting stuff coming out. So here's a quick biology lesson. Most of you kind of heard of this left brain, right brain idea, but that's only part of the story. Yes, that's the big part and the obvious part if you look at our heads from the top down. You have the two hemispheres. But inside of those, in the center of the brain, is what we call the limbic system, or your emotional brain. This is the one that forms memories, that has strong associations, likes things, hates things, reacts to them emotionally. And then underneath all of that is kind of the brain stem, and that part keeps the lights on. And it's there to, you don't have to think about taking a breath in the middle of the night or how to keep your heart beating. That's what housekeeping is there for. That's the sort of deep survival brain. So if we kind of, everything that we do, though, is focused on the rational brain. All of us aspire to be rational and consistent and predictable in our behavior. I mean, in California, we have this saying, or we say, "Dude, that was totally random." I mean, it was unexpected, out of the blue, strange. We certainly don't want that in our interactions with people. So we prize logic and delayed gratification and planning ahead and thinking things through and weighing choices rationally. And that's all good stuff. That's how we got to the moon and invented microwave ovens. But that's only part of the story. Unfortunately, our focus as marketers, because we use this part of the brain to actually make our campaigns and make our websites and drive traffic, has always been kind of on the on this brain alone. But underneath it, and something that we share with all mammals, is our emotional brain. And again, this is the one that feels things, that says, ooh, I hate that. Ooh, that tastes good. Oh, that smells bad. Those strong emotions are very much bound up with our sensory impressions and our ability to form memories. In fact, one of the keys to forming strong memories is to have very strong emotions. The first time you did something, the most extreme time you did something, your first kiss you probably remember, your 100th kiss probably not so much. So it's whatever calibrates your scale in terms of both good and bad. It's like, oh, that's good, I want more of it. Oh, that's bad, I want to avoid that next time. That's kind of a natural mammalian response, if you will. But underneath all that is the reptilian brain, and this is the one we share with pretty much all things that slithered out of the sea at some point, or some that still live there. And again, like I said, this is the one that keeps the lights on, and it cares about only one thing: survival. So it just reacts to things. This is the one that kicks in adrenaline if you're about to swerve or get in a car accident. This is the one that basically gets that fight or flight system going. It's also the one that cares about finding mates and finding food and basic need satisfaction like that. The lower needs, if you want to look at them in a kind of Indian chakra sense. But the point is that the part that we don't really understand is that 95% of our actions are actually pre-conscious. And again, with brain imaging and real-time stuff, we're actually able to see that a lot of times you'll ask someone something, and you'll see their brain making the decision, and a second or two later they're able to use their conscious part of the brain to verbalize it or actually rationalize it. But the decision was made. It was made at a gut level. It was made pretty much instantly, but it wasn't conscious. And we can't attend to everything consciously. There are billions of impressions on our brains every waking day. That's why we need to sleep to process and kind of assimilate all of that. They think that's one of the main functions of sleep. So imagine many of you probably drove a car to work this morning. Well, how many of you were thinking about every part of the driving journey? You probably weren't. You were thinking about what you're going to do for dinner tonight, or what your plans are, or what you're going to do when you get to work. So we do a lot of things on autopilot, and the other brains are in charge during that autopilot stage. The other brains are the ones that are making 95% of our kind of daily activities, if you will. So the way to think about it is that for the rational brain, it can think ahead. For the other two brains, change is the scary thing. Change is the swear word. Change is what they're afraid of. And they're going to be the bouncers that keep everything from getting to the conscious mind. But it has a pretty set wiring in our brain, especially the reptilian brain. This is a very logical, rational brain explanation of how our irrational brain works. The reptilian brain basically has this flowchart. The first thing we ask is it dangerous? Well, if it is dangerous, we got to deal with it. There's your fight or flight part. Run away from it or kill it. If it's not dangerous, is it interesting? Is it something I've experienced? Now you have the emotional brain kicking in and saying, is this kind of emotionally salient? Is this surprising? Or is it memorable or unique in some way? Well, if it's something I've seen before, again, it's my 100th kiss, or even if you like skydiving and thrill sports like that, probably your 100th skydive is not going to be as salient as your first. Yeah, I've been there, done that, check the parachute, make sure it's packed properly and the ripcord works. But it's not super exciting. It's not going to be a wow kind of thing one way or another. So if we've seen it before, we kind of tune out, and you see this a lot in business meetings and presentations we do. We're like, yeah, we're back to being on autopilot and thinking about something else. But if it is not dangerous and it is interesting, oh, okay, I'm going to kick this upstairs for the conscious exploration of my conscious, rational, new brain, if you will, the neocortex. The big brain, the one we traditionally think of as making up all of our experience. So that's so the way to think about it. I'm sure all of you have heard about the sales funnel and the different steps in the sales funnel. Well, I'm going to give you a very non-traditional view of the sales funnel, and here it is. This is the real sales funnel. The brainstem controls everything, and kind of the bouncer to the limbic system, and a few things filter down to that. And the limbic system, if it's novel, then decides to kick it upstairs to the neocortex for the real consideration. So you can see their relative importance. And this is really kind of the key to what I'm saying, is that you really have to understand who's in control and who's in the driver's seat. I mean, basically, your rational mind is kept in the dark 95% of the time by the bouncers at the door, okay, your other two brains. So the way to think about it is that
Tim, question on that last slide.
Sure, absolutely.
Is that how you used to distinguish between something, say, I need versus something I must have? Is that where that happens, in that spot right there as you're processing the opportunity?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that, but a lot of times we talk about, for example, need or must have. We talk about making a rational decision, quote unquote, with cold cognition and using our neocortex, or this rational mind. Well, it turns out there's research, and there's some people that have certain parts of their brain lesioned or not connected to each other through accidents or strokes or other effects. And what they found is that people literally cannot make a decision without an emotional component. If that part of the brain is disconnected, you can't come to a decision. So all of our decisions are emotional. It's just a question of to what degree.
Perfect, thanks.
So if we kind of think about our reptilian brain, this is the one that I really want to focus on. Here are the key characteristics of it. It does things the same way. It never learns. If you touch a hot stove, you're just going to pull your finger away. And if you touch a hot stove again, you're not going to go, oh, I think I burnt it last time, therefore I should pull it away. You're just going to do the same thing. And that's why it's hard to change some basic habits, because if they're rooted in kind of survival level stuff, we just are going to repeat the same thing over and over. The reptilian brain does not learn from experience. It only cares about, like I said, keeping the lights on. Fight, flight, feeding, and fornication, the 4 F's as I call them. And it's the gatekeeper or the bouncer for the other brains. And so there you go. That's the quick tour of the biology. And now I want to move on to part 2 and talk about, okay, Tim, that's wonderful. Thanks for that. But how do I make money off of this stuff? So I want to give you some practical strategies so that you can put this to work in your daily life, or in your working life anyway. I'm going to give you 4 strategies, and there's a method behind that madness. In fact, it's the very first point I'm making. You need to create a small number of clear choices. I'm giving you 4 strategies, just remember that, because that's about the maximum number of choices that we can remember in parallel, or items in a list. That's why phone numbers are chunked into 4-digit blocks and so on. All right, so if I ask you the question of which is the tallest man in the world and which one is the shortest man in the world in this picture, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have any problem figuring that out. And you go, duh, Tim, that's obvious. And that's really the reaction that I want you to have. It should be obvious, because we're really good at making those kind of decisions. Wow, that guy is really tall, or wow, that guy is really short. It's obvious. But if you put 2 guys, standing 10 feet apart, and one is 6'4" and one's 6'5", that's a hard decision for me to make. Which one's taller? I don't know. They look pretty much the same to me. Okay, so clear choices are something that we can make without getting a ruler out or thinking about it or anything like that, in terms of size, obviously. But yet we ignore this when we get to online. Here's an example. Let's say you're looking for promotional pens for your company, and you came to this website. In fact, it's a real website. How would you make your decision on what pens to buy? What's going to determine that? I don't know. Is it the fact that is this a single pen versus a set of 4 pens? Well, no, that's not it. Maybe it's the colors that they're showing you that matter. But really, what do I make my choices on? Well, okay, is it a push on the back of it kind of pen? Does it have a pocket way for me to attach it? How easy to grip is the pen? All of those things are things I care about. So if they had shown me clear choices by not showing me the dumb, tiny thumbnail view of the pen, but rather a close-up of the tip of it and a close-up of the back of it, or the writing part, that would have been helpful. This, trying to look at tiny thumbnails that all look the same, is not creating clear choice for me. And yet we see this kind of stuff, especially in e-commerce, with very useless thumbnails without enlarged callouts or things that kind of look the same. So that's definitely a problem.
Tim, does it bother you that the pins up top, the larger pins are not down below? I just find that rather interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's rather strange, I have to say. But seeing them that size, by the way, would have been helpful. You can see which one has the rubber grips and their approximate barrel diameter and what they look like and their styling and all of that. But that would have, if you had a whole page full of pens that size, that would have been acceptable too. But yeah, it's rather odd. Okay, I like those. Now how do I find them? There's another issue here in terms of the small number of clear choices I was talking about. It looks like they have approximately 30, well, up to 36 pens because they have 3 pages of 12 items per page, but that's too much choice. They're kind of saying, well, we're trying to get from California to New York, why don't we drive you to Kansas City and then you walk the rest of the way there and page through the results, page 1, page 2, page 3. That's kind of throwing up all over your visitors and making them clean up the mess. So that's not a good thing either. But okay, we're not going to criticize this website. We have some live critiques we're going to do after this on sites that people have submitted. Okay, so in terms of strategy number 1, creating a small number of clear choices, making choices actually tires our conscious mind, our rational brain, and it makes it harder to make decisions, which is why in all condo timeshare presentations, first they'll show you the pool and the clubhouse, and then when they're talking about signing you up for your timeshare, that happens after they've worn you down. And at the very end of the day, that's the best time to hit people. So a lot of times what you need to help manage that choice is actually to create guides or wizards, not some mechanical filtering. We have 40,000 things and we're going to show them all to you, or filter down. Nobody uses that kind of faceted drill down filtering navigation. So if you know what's important about the choices that I have to make, embody that knowledge in a set of simple questions, more like I guess you could say TurboTax does it with their product. The whole tax code is reduced to a series of simple questions that anyone can answer. Did you live outside of the U.S. for more than 6 months this year? Yes or no? You can easily answer that. If yes, we're going to show you this next question, and so on. And then they fill in the forms behind the scenes for you. But I think in most situations, even if with complex choices, if someone walked into your store and you're the subject matter expert, or into your business, you could ask them 3 or 4 pointed questions and get to the heart of what they need. And so a lot of times what's appropriate is not overwhelming with choice or even filtering, but rather guided experiences. And one other key is remove similar choices. Many of us are proud of the fact that, especially in e-commerce, that we carry everything. We're like the Amazon for women's shoes, or whatever your tagline is, but that means you carry everything from every manufacturer, and that's actually a problem, because I just want, suitcases. I want the big one, the little one, the really tiny one, carry-on bag, or I want the hard shell ones or the soft-sided luggage. I don't want 17 choices inside of large suitcase soft-sided. I probably don't. So give me the low price, medium price, and high price one. That's probably enough. So again, make it manageable, whatever you want me to consider. Martin, any thoughts or comments on that?
When you have hundreds and thousands of products, it's difficult to do that. But your point is how you organize them and present them is
That's right. It can't just be an infinite drill down, or, like I said, just infinitely scrolling pages and you're expecting them to do the work by looking at thumbnails or a grid or a list of products.
Perfect.
You have to put more of your domain knowledge and your intelligence into the experience. And so a lot of times it's like, okay, yeah, you can give them the kitchen sink version, but also, hey, here's our handy dandy wizard, help me choose. And that should be much more of a guided and holding my hand experience. And at every step of that, you give me a limited amount of choice. So for example, we work with a custom suit company where you can just take your measurements and then order your suit online and they'll make a custom tailored suit. So simple choices like, okay, do you want pinstripe or not pinstripe? Do you want navy versus gray color for your suit? Do you want your lapels to be tuxedo style or notched? Or do you want your pockets inside or outside, flapped on the outside? Do you want a single vent in the back, a double vent, or no vent? In each one of those is a simple step. Now, if you do the math, there are tens of millions of combinations of possible suits they can have in addition to the actual dimensions, but just in terms of style. But by walking through a wizard with simple atomic operations at every step, we can get rid of that complexity. All right, let's talk about strategy number 2. And remember, there are 4 of them because we're going to keep it to a small number that you can digest. Use a big anchor. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, context matters. We're not rational beings. I hope that that's coming through loud and clear on this. Context really matters. So what we want to do is to have an anchor that primes us and predisposes us to an experience. For example, eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. So, and often a good trial lawyer will lead you with the way they ask the question. So for example, Mr. White, how fast were you going when you smashed into the back of that minivan with the school children? Okay, well, you probably get a very different response to your defense lawyer asking the same question, which is, Mr. White, how fast were you going when you bumped the back of that minivan? And that word smash versus bumped is going to, from the same eyewitnesses watching the same video in a controlled experiment, elicit completely different responses. So how we present the information and what precedes us, or how we prime you to recall something or make a decision, really matters. So here's an example. We're on a website and we're being asked to pick among 3 hosting plans. Most of us, at least in the West, read from left to right. So we're looking at the pricing on this, and what we're seeing is the first plan is $250, and the next plan is $4, and the next plan is $6. The prices are going up and to the right. And by the time you get to that $6 plan, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, that better be a heck of a hosting plan because it's more than twice as expensive as the other one. And you're seeing that in that order because that's the way it was presented. A lot of times for pricing especially, that's the wrong choice. For example, let me go back to my suit example. I don't know why I have suits on the brain, but if I go in to buy a suit, oh, Mr. Ash, please try this on, test drive it. Okay, here's your $1,000 suit. Oh, would you like some cufflinks with that, or a tie, or a pair of shoes, or a shirt? They're always asking those upsell. It's the would you like fries with that kind of approach, right? Because after buying a $1,000 suit and making that commitment, buying a $50 silk tie doesn't seem that big a deal, even though it's a big ripoff and it's probably cost $10 to make. But if you showed me a rack of ties and said, here's a $10 tie, here's a $50 tie, that's a very different experience because I saw the $10 tie first. I'm not going to pay 5 times as much. But if I see a $1,000 suit first, I may consider paying a 20th of that to get a tie. So, for example, in our Attention Wizard software, which is software that we created to predict where someone's initial attention is going to go on a website when they first get to it, we sell this. So actually, let me just explain. This is essentially instant heat maps. You upload an image, doesn't even have to be of a live web page, and we'll predict where the hot spots of visual attention are going to be on the page. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But as you can see, we have 3 plans: the gold, the silver, and the bronze. 197, 97, and 27. Well, by the time you get down to the bronze, which is the one most people buy anyway, it seems like a heck of a deal because it's not $200, it's $30. Now, your rational brain's going to probably, if it gets kicked in, and it hasn't for any of you, I guarantee it, is going to say, well, that's about $3 a heat map. Here, this is about $2 a heat map. And with the gold plan, they're down to about $1 a heat map. That's the best value right there. That's the one the rational brain should be buying if you're going to be using it a lot. But that's not how people think. They just anchor on the price, and the order that they see the price makes a big difference. So we sell a lot more of these because our price scale goes down. Byron, I know that when you and I have gone out, you like your nice wines. When you're in a nice restaurant, do they, on the wine list, do they put the cheap wines at the top or the expensive ones?
Depends which restaurant.
Okay, well, sorry, not hometown buffet, but normally what you have is that $500 bottle of wine, right?
At the bottom of the list, right?
No, at the top, actually. At the expensive restaurants is going to be at the top. And the reason they do that is that, yeah, because most restaurants,
they scatter. The scatter approach, I think, is the right one, though, isn't it?
Well, it's actually, putting them in declining price is shown to be the best approach. Because if you see a $500 bottle of wine, and then you see the $75 bottle of Rodney Strong, and you go, okay, I'm at a business dinner with colleagues. I don't want to seem like a cheapskate. I'll order that. Gee, it's a lot cheaper than the 500 bottle, but the fact that you can go to Costco and buy it for $25, I mean, that would be a different kind of comparison. But in the context of a restaurant with the expensive wine first, it's going to seem like a pretty good deal. So this kind of stuff happens all the time. Is it rational? Absolutely not. So anchoring is important. I mean, I'll show you just one more irrational kind of way of example. They ask people to recall the last 2 digits of their Social Security number. So it would be anywhere from 99 to 01, or 00, I guess. And then they ask them, what would you be willing to pay for a raffle ticket to enter this particular drawing and win this prize? And here's the funny part. With that recall task first, the people whose numbers were 90, whose last 2 digits were 90s versus the zeros, were willing to pay 60% more for the raffle ticket. And you'd say, that's completely irrational, Tim. And I'd say, that's my point exactly. So basically, we anchor on the first thing we see. And what you might want to do as a tactic or strategy is to add a new high-end item, which you don't expect to sell at all, just to make the put them in the decreasing price order, like I said, and then sales of the reasonable compromise will increase. And even irrational anchors can be put in the lobby of the experience or before you get to the main decision. And again, do Social Security digits have anything to do with dollar pricing of raffle tickets? No, they're completely unrelated, but we can anchor with irrational stuff on the way to the key decisions.
Do irrational anchors essentially offer almost more rationalization for the purchase? Peace of mind, sort of, does it center you? What's happening emotionally with these irrational anchors, if I can understand that?
Well, basically, unless you have endless supplies of money, if we're talking about economic stuff, again, it kicks in that first strategy I was talking about, making clear distinctions. One is big, one is small. Okay, if you just say, you get, it's $10 a month or $100 for the year, and I have to do math and say, oh, that's approximately a 20% discount, that's rational thinking. But if you say, it's $10 monthly or $50 for the year, that's a clearer decision. You see, so it's kind of kicking in both the anchoring and the contrast of big versus small.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. You bet. All right, let's go on to our third strategy of 4, and that is be in my cultural tribe. Now, just a quick aside, I view a lot of human beings, or all human beings, as kind of an overlay of our tribal identities. That's just at a human scale. We always, kind of hang out in small, intimate groups. We might go from tribe to tribe. Some of these are voluntary, some are not. For example, if you decide to cut your hair in a mohawk or shave your head like I do, that's a voluntary tribe. If you're an orphan, you probably didn't choose to be an orphan. That's an involuntary tribe, or you're a minority, or your skin color is different, or you were born in a different country and you speak with a funny accent. Those are all involuntary tribes, but choosing to drive a particular make of car or wear particular clothes, those are voluntary tribes. So you can think of ours as kind of an overlay of our tribal affiliations, voluntary or involuntary. And the point is, and this is especially true if you have kids that are teenagers, you realize that kids don't really care about what their parents think. They often care about what their peers think. So we're influenced more by people in our tribe. So here's a website called The Oatmeal. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. It's kind of this irreverent, I'm a smart intellectual, but with enough sense of humor to laugh at myself. So they're featuring this book, How to Tell If Your Cat is Plotting to Kill You. By the way, if you have cats, you know exactly what that means. Okay, so it's kind of a funny website. You can see their cartoonish editorial style and the subject matter. Okay, well, do you think they're aiming for the same audience on this website? Gears of War, Judgment. No, it's this dark post-apocalyptic, violent, thing going on. And I venture to guess there probably isn't too much overlap in the audiences of these two websites. The people reading the oatmeal are not the 15-year-old boys that are playing Gears of War. Now, I've been known to play a video game or two myself, but that's another side story. The point is that don't be afraid to alienate people. I mean, we're tribal. Our tribes are self-selected. We really care about people, are influenced by people in our tribe. So you have to look the part. That means visually, editorial tone, all of that. And you have to communicate your values with that. And here, this is a really, really important key. Don't be afraid to alienate people if they're outside of your target audience. If you have a tightly defined target audience, especially, not just kind of everybody showing up, if you will, then talk to your base, if you will. You see that a lot in politics. Some politicians are saying very repulsive, extreme things. Well, guess what? They're not talking to you. You made up your mind already, and you probably have an opposing position. They're talking to their base and energizing their base. You hear that a lot. So don't worry about alienating everybody else. Talk to your base if you want to be effective. Any thoughts on this strategy, Byron?
Well, it's difficult to get and motivate clients and customers to alienate people. They feel like they want to sell to everyone and everyone should love their products. This is probably the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, and
how do you
it's
overcome that fear?
Well, that's a great question. Now, on our website, if you go to it, our name, you'll see the logo in the upper left with Site Tuners, and you'll see our tagline, Conversion Rate Optimization. We don't say, and pay-per-click, and affiliate marketing, and social media, and traffic buying. We're not talking about any of those things. You have to be specialists, and especially in this age of ADD and infinite information, the sea of the internet that we float around in, you have to be very specific to be remembered. And so I think it's a big mistake to do that, what I call death by and product line extension, and trying to say, yeah, we sell 95% of this, but we want to sell 5% of that, so we're going to talk about that a lot. I think it's a mistake. It's better to focus down and really know who you're talking to and what you're talking on, because most of us are craving that kind of spot on, wow, where's this company been all my life? I can't live without it. They really understand me. They're talking to me. And again, this obviously from a writing aspect and headlines and the copywriting, this is critical. It's the same and applies to conversion more generally.
Perfect.
The power of focus, I guess. All right, I want to leave off with the last strategy, and then we'll get to do some of the quick website reviews, and that is the power of visuals. I'm going to breeze through this because there's a lot to talk about here, but without going into the wetware again too much, trust me when I tell you, half of your brain is just wired to process various kinds of visual information. It's a lot of hardware, or wetware rather, devoted to this task. And it's really good at it. So just to kind of review 7th grade biology, you have rods and cones. One detects fine detail, but only in a very narrow range, and the other detects motion in a very wide range, about 220 degrees. So this is really what your world looks like, just a gray fuzz. And if anything is moving in that scene, you'll know about it because that's necessary for survival. But then your brain jitters your eyeball around in the center of the eyeball and looks for interesting things in the scene. And as it does that, what happens is at the end of that process, as that's going on, you think you see this. You think you see a full high-resolution picture of the world. In fact, this is kind of scary. Your brain, through assumptions and filling in the blanks, creates 98% of what you think of as your visual experience. You don't see. You only see 2%, 3% of the actual visual scene in front of you. The rest is filled in by your brain. Okay, so it's really good at doing that. Let's take a quick example. If I ask you, what does this site sell? I'd like everybody to focus on that. Okay, what does this site sell? Most of you probably answer flat screen TVs. Okay, if I ask you now, what does this site sell? Most of you would answer probably vacuum cleaners and other junk. If I ask you again what this site sells, you'd probably tell me that they sell appliances of different kinds. If I ask you again, you probably say they sell Xboxes. and gaming consoles. And if I ask you after seeing this screen, you'd probably say they sell the shame of not owning a smartphone. Now, one question I have for you, you've all just looked at several screenfuls and that banner ad at the top was changing. Well, my question for you is, what was the product in the lower right portion of that screen? There was a product. I bet you none of our listeners, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong through the chat window, but to answer what was in that lower right corner.
The camera.
Oh, Byron, you're good. You're the first person ever.
Presentation before.
Okay, well, not fair. Okay, you've seen this presentation before. Okay, so if we go back, what we'll find is that it was indeed the Olympus Tough camera, which is actually a great camera. You can drop it in the water or take it skiing with you or put it in sand. It works, still works. And it was there in the previous screen. Yes, sir, go ahead.
While you were going through those, I was actually focused on the 4 things on the bottom, just so you said, what does this site sell? What does this site sell? Because those are the things that remain stable on the bottom of the site.
Well, but that's not the way yeah, it's interesting. You're a freak of nature, and you've seen this presentation perhaps too many times. No, but joking aside, we can't not react to motion. Remember what I was saying about having really wide, like 220-degree field of view for motion? Mm-hmm. The reason that's there is if there's something big coming from my left at a certain speed, I need to know about that now. This is not the same as, okay, I'll look at this berry and see what color it is, determine if it's poisonous, take my time with it. That kind of fine discrimination can be done in an unpressured environment. But if there's something big moving from my left, I need to know about it. So we're always going to be triggered by motion, which is why I hate animated sliders or motion or video or anything like that that's not being used for a constructive purpose. It resets our attention. We literally can't not look at each one of those frames as they go by every 2 seconds. We're forced to look at it.
Would you rather see on the home page of this Best Buy site some sort of visually interesting, artistically inclined representation of the diversity of products they sell, which would then be easy to drill down into? For example, like a tree with instead of leaves on the tree where the branches are, there's different products. We have appliances here and cameras here and homes. Sort of a visually interesting architectural view of the whole site. Would that work better from a
Yeah, I mean, for an e-commerce catalog, you should have category level images that are collages that show the diversity of stuff in that category, but static images. I think B&H Photo Video does a great job on their homepage and the body of their page of having category level navigation. Okay, if they haven't changed it, that.
And is that reinforced in the mobile platform as well, that thinking?
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to create motion. You don't even have any screen resolution to do it with. Okay, so we talked about motion. It's deadly. Let me be clear. Don't use motion unless it directly supports the call to action. It's like dropping a hand grenade in the middle of your page. Nothing will survive in the blast radius. Think of it this way. There's a hierarchy of motion, graphics, and text generally. And if there's something at a higher level, it's going to interrupt and undermine anything more subtle going on in the page. We can't read text in the presence of strong images. We can't view images in the presence of motions or visual distractions like that. Okay. All right, so that's the hierarchy, if you will. But even for images, there's a hierarchy. So when you're looking at this page here, what are you looking at? I can tell you right now. You're looking at smiling guy. You're looking at sideways bald guy. And then after a while, you're going to look at gray-haired distinguished guy with blue tie. And as you're looking at those folks on the screen, what you're not doing is reading any of the text. Am I right? Does anybody have a look yet as what this site does? No, because you're looking at the pictures. And especially human faces, there's a special part of our brain designed just to, it's neuroemotional kind of memory recording centers that's designed to pick out human faces. We will pay attention to them. They're a rich source of information in the environment, and telling even just the nuances of someone's expression tells us a lot about their intent, and again, for survival reasons, that's kind of important. So here's sometimes it can be used deliberately. So here's our website. So that face on top is there to draw you to our secondary call to action, which is takes you to our contact us form, put us to work. In the body of the page, you see how it's boring and stripped down, but we're using the picture of the sports car to anchor your eye there and drop your eye right below that to the main call to action in the body of the page. So this is a very deliberate, by contrast, use of graphics. But if you just sprinkle your page with graphics, stock photography especially, I call that business porn. You know, I mean, unless it directly supports a conversion action, it shouldn't even be on the page. And this is a case where it does. The previous page is an example of how not to do it. And there are lots of sites where the graphic designer just goes, God, we got to dress this up somehow. It's so boring. Well, think about controlling attention on the page, and then boring is actually good in most circumstances. All right, let's go on. Video, same thing. This is the old Conversion Conference site. You can see we have an embedded video, or actually a little thumbnail video viewer there. Once you pop that open, if you want to have the full screen experience, then actually what happens is you get to see it in a light box pop over a nice high-res viewer. One of the worst things you can do is embed a kind of half-assed video player on the page, which makes it hard to design around it, and it's still not a good video experience. Same goes with kind of a combination of video plays and walk-on video spokespeople. Sometimes it can be very powerful. Play with that, but video will definitely get our attention. But how even you represent video on the page is also important. For example, is Camtasia, which is video editing software, but I challenge you to find the video player button on this page. It's not actually the pictures that draw your visual attention. That right there is the main call to action on the page, a little gray button. So how you represent video, whether you autoplay it, whether you show it embedded in the page or make it clickable, whether the clickable thing is a thumbnail or a button, all of those things really matter, and I would experiment with that. So basically there's lots of ways to predict visual attention on the page, from eye tracking headgear to mouse movement recording to algorithms. Of course, eye tracking is expensive. It gives you a rich world of information. Mouse tracking is kind of the poor man's eye tracking, I call it, and it's helpful as far as it goes, but you still need live people on the page. And then the software that I was talking about, our Attention Wizard software, for example, is a way to, we know a lot about visual processing in the brain, so you can upload a static image or a mock-up, doesn't even have to be a live page, and we can predict and create a heat map of where we think the attention is going to go. So visuals are crucial, and understanding about them is very important. So here's what you need to know before I wrap up. Visual processing is very powerful and quick. We will be drawn to strong visual signals. And so we really need to make sure we use faces and people carefully, the support calls to action, avoid unnecessary motion or animation, and definitely test all aspects of how you use video on the page. So here's a summary of the 4 strategies that I gave you. Create a small number of clear choices, use a big anchor, be in my cultural tribe, and understand the power of visuals. All of these things are deeply rooted in our physicality, in our bodies, in our evolution, and this is universal. This stuff applies everywhere. So start paying attention to the wetware and not the hardware and software so much. For those of you that are in the Chicago area, we're having our last conversion conference in the U.S. of 2014, actually Tuesday and Wednesday, going up there tomorrow. But for those of you that are not able to make it to Chicago, I invite you to our big once-a-year show format that we're moving to May 13th and 14th in Las Vegas. And Byron, you'll probably be there, I'm guessing. For those webinar listeners here, you can go to the website, conversionconference.com, and sign up for just $4.99. That's a fully transferable pass, so even if you can't make it, you can pass it on to somebody. But you have to do it by next Friday. All right, Byron, I know we have some sites to look at. I want to also shout out is if people like the site reviews, you can get either a single page or a full website review from us, and jot down the promo code WRITER to get 100 off by next Friday. And all you have to do is go to expressreviewoffer.com and use the WRITER promo code. All right, Byron, I think we're going to move on to some live sites that people submitted, and we're going to tear them apart for a few minutes.
Right on. Let's do that, and then let's see if we have any time left after some questions. But I know people are really excited about the review, so let's go at it.
All right, and I think you're going to find some common themes and violations of what we're talking about. So here's Craig Travel. I know you've looked at some of these, so shoot.
Well, is there anything? Well, I always like starting with the tribe content, the tribe comment, in my tribe. So when I look at this site, once again, we've got motion here, I don't know, experience our world. I want to travel the world. What is our world? Is our world the company? I mean, I'm a bit lost really with what the value.
So what's the tribe? Is there any focus to this, or what you're saying is this generic? We'll do anything for anyone. We'll take your travel money if you give it to us.
Yeah. My tribe is lost from the headline. Distinctive journeys for the mature travel. What does mature mean? Is that the elderly population? Is that the experienced
By the way,
traveler?
you're eagle-eyed because you saw that tagline up there. That should be a page title. That's great positioning. And if this is for older folks or retired folks or senior citizens, call it what it is too. You don't have to use euphemisms. I agree, like mature traveler.
Exactly.
But the point is that should be a page headline, and the editorial tone should be showing. I think this is one place of older people on camelback and older people on a riverboat and older people at the top of the Eiffel Tower, but so get that editorial tone both with the headline and visually, and I think you have to have that kind of tight positioning. You can't just be travel, because when I think of travel, I think of Expedia. I don't think of Craig Travel, no offense. Mm-hmm. So you have to stand for something.
That's the beauty, if you go down a punch list, like I was looking at this site, okay, what's emotionally appealing, what's rationally appealing, to a target audience, to a travel target audience. What's emotionally appealing is, the biggest room in the corner of the hotel, or a free upgrade to luxury, or, trimmed budgets, but the best gig, or, secret spots that you're only going to learn with us and not, Expedia, so that's emotionally appealing.
Yeah.
What's rationally appealing is great rates, best experience.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because, again, this is not rational. I mean, the question is when I land here, is this the right site for me? And by the way, if you are aiming at this as mature travelers, the journeys by land, I don't remember any old folks doing, cattle drives or Mustang drives lately. That seems a little bit too, so be really careful of the stock photography images you choose. They really need to be representative and well thought out and not just wallpaper, which goes to the motion on the page. That's my biggest beef with it. That rotating banner on top is just really distracted, prevents me from consuming any of the other page content.
Yeah. And I think that companies can get away with this if their target audience knows who they are already and they're just sort of putting up a nice sort of brochure-aware site. But the game of conversion starts with turning new browsers into believers and believers into buyers, people that don't know you or your brand. Tom Peters has a great book that he actually never published. I have a copy of it. It was sort of published as a test. It's called Brand Me. And that's really a lot of what, Tim, I think we talked about today is who is your tribe? What is your brand at Craig Travel?
Yeah, what do you stand for? Who are you? And again, super tight, laser focus.
Yeah.
It's not death by end.
To bring in another great author, Seth Godin, Purple Cow. Like, what is your purple cow? Like, what
makes it unique and really distinctive, memorable?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is brochure-aware at best.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's throw up another site. This is Ready Artwork. And in terms of visuals, again, I'm going to just react on this kind of neuroscience level. That red is just obnoxious. It's such a strong color. Red is a very, very powerful color, and you can use it as an accent or a main call to action button or in your logo a little sparingly, but red areas all over the page and your header in that form, and combined with motion. I don't even know how to consume this page. This is like a visual assault. This is like somebody shooting me in the face with an Uzi at point-blank range.
Well, it is a bright, beautiful red. Target can get away with a red. We could talk about reds. People build identities around different colors. We got that. But honestly, the confusion here is Ready Artwork is kind of a difficult, big old brand name. And what exactly does that mean? Is this artwork that's already made that I am buying a templated site? Is this a web design and development company? Is this what? I don't really understand what this company does. Do you?
No, and it's a little ironic, I must say. Thanks for submitting your site and letting us trash it. But I mean, you are a web design marketing firm, and it's not clear what you do. It's ironic. I mean, if we hadn't looked at this site in a lot of detail and tried to tune out your rotating motion and commercials, we'd dig down and says graphic design is an important part of branding and marketing. Yes, it is, and I think you've done an over-the-top, crazy job with it. I think it's going at cross purposes with what you're trying to do.
It's powerful. Another thing I wanted you to comment on, Tim, don't you have to kind of earn someone's trust before you demand that they fill out and get a quote, you know?
Yeah, that's a little too kind of in your face with the call to action. Like, first let's date before you ask me to marry you.
Exactly.
But you know, one thing, on the positive side, you are using people. Unfortunately, it's rotating in the lower right area, but you are using real pictures of your staff, so you're making an emotional connection. Those are the real people that work for us. If you had a nice picture of your staff, professionally done, not some like we're on his snowboarding vacation here by the lodge, or something, you know, not properly lit outside, or showing your butts by the door there. It's nice butts, but you know, the point is, have one nice picture of your staff. If you're delivering any kind of professional services and what they're buying is you, the person, or you, the team, that's often a great thing to put on your site. That's why we put my bald head on the top of our pages. Because I'm one of the faces of the company. So that's good. It just needs to be done differently, not rotating, not an afterthought in the corner, and professionally done.
You know, this is a cool company that should do 20 versions of their website and test them all. Guess what? They're in the business to do that. They can easily do that. So, and what a great showcase that would be for their other clients, saying, hey, testing is a great way to determine what works and what doesn't work. And by the way, Tim's opinion, my opinion, these are subjective opinions. What you hear good conversion people like Tim talk about is take the subjective opinions out of it. You know, let technology determine what's the best.
If you have enough traffic. Now, I'm afraid that, you know, my company, for example, or these guys, I mean, we don't have enough traffic to test. It's not like we have thousands of form fills a day. You know, the companies that have big data or high data rates really are in the catbird seat, because they can even settle stupid bar bets by testing. But some smaller businesses can, unfortunately. So,
yeah.
All right, let's go to another site here. I think this will probably be our last one. Next view, expect more. Oh, there's rotating motion in the upper right in that palm tree. Now in the upper left. Now the motion shifts to the bottom big banner. And in all of that time, I'm watching those really stunning graphics. I'm not even looking at the icon set of the 4 things below it, much less reading the text. So you have massive visual assault, medium visual assault, and less visual assault. This is kind of like text, graphics, and motion. And you know, you might as well not have the lower 2/3 of that page, because the motion is going to just, you know, blow everything out. Nice production quality. It seems like, you know, well put together site, but it's just.
Yeah, I just don't think that these wonderfully interesting visuals, lower cost, a tropical scene. I mean, you know, anywhere, you know, we've got. I feel pretty sure that that's Lake Louise up in Canada, although I might be wrong. It's probably definitely up in Canada, but I don't see the connection. You know, ballet.
Yeah, you know what? This is the business porn I was talking about. It's stock photography. We can all go to iStock Photo and buy the same images for a buck. In fact, your competitors did, and it's on their websites as well. Has nothing to do with you. If you're trying to make ERP and accounting software sexy, sorry, a picture isn't going to do that. Okay, you're talking to a business buyer that's going to make a huge decision, and they need to know you're serious.
Right. You know, so again, I can just see the owners of this company making these decisions, wanting to be novel, you know, wanting to be exciting, and I guess
just not to be
palm
bored.
Trees and I get why they would gravitate towards images like this, is to perhaps be a little bit novel, to be more creative and stand out from the pack from their competitors that might have even more boring stock photography than this. I mean, you know, they could be worse, right? And if we looked at their competitors, they probably are, but. unfortunately, we're missing the clear choices. We're missing any anchors to understand what you do.
Yeah, and if you took away that whole top section and you just said this, this is the four things, the four choices you have. Small number of clear choices presented in a way that they can be considered in parallel. That right there would be a better page. Just take out those graphics.
Right. But what is this company doing for me? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't see what the value proposition is for me. I'm not motivated. So tell me what you do. Probably tell me what you do again. And then tell me why
the headline is good. It's in the sense that it's functional. I mean, the tagline sucks. Expect more. That doesn't tell me anything. But transforming NRP into organizational productivity, that's a little aspirational, though. I'd like you to say, would you say ERP and accounting software for mid-size manufacturing businesses, period, end of story. Again, just right. Functional, not this kind of marketing happy talk about transforming anything into productivity. Because I got to put my bullshit filters on for that.
And so really fun. Do you want to try to do one more? Or you want to wrap up?
I don't think we have time. We're right on the hour.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yep. Well, I want to thank everyone for taking on the risk to let Tim and I chat about what we see going wrong with these sites. We'd love to hear if there's so many things going right with these sites that were completely wrong in our assessment, because that may be the case. Who knows? These could be the leaders in their industry. Don't listen to us, but do listen to testing if you can.
Testing. Yeah, and just the one key takeaway again, these are the universals of our biology, our bodies, and our brains are the things you should be focusing and ground yourself in the evergreen, permanent insights you get there. Learn more about the brain and decision making and psychology and the latest research and how that applies to marketing. Don't focus on the technology, focus on the biology.
And I'd say also focus on the wants and needs of the readers and discovering what those wants and needs are within your own tribe, because that's the secret. That's the hard part, Tim, don't you think?
Yeah, defining your tribe and having the discipline to articulate it only for them.
Yep, and testing it with them and getting their feedback and seeing if it resonates well and it engages. This is hard stuff for sure. Well, listen, I want to thank you, Tim, for tuning in with us today. No pun intended.
My pleasure, Byron.
It's always fun with you, Tim. You did such a great job. Thanks very much. Just a reminder for everyone that we'll be sending links out. Tim will send his special offers out to everybody that registered as well, so you can take advantage of an opportunity to get some live makeover comment suggestions through that fantastic deal that Tim offered to everybody. And catch Tim at his conferences. I'll be at the conference in Vegas. Count me in. I'll be there with my wife, I'm sure, because she won't let me go without her. She's missed too many travel trips to places like this, and so she's already demanded she go. So we'll look forward to that show, Tim. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate it. You'll get an email from me with links to download the deck and to sign up for all this stuff, including the books, so stay tuned for that. In probably a couple of hours, I'm sure Glenn will be right on it. So thanks again, Tim.
Absolutely, Byron. My pleasure.
Right on. Until next month, everybody, we'll hope you have a better, more conversive plan between now and then. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you.